The nurse didn't raise her voice. She didn't grab my arm. She leaned in close, looked me straight in the eyes, and whispered one sentence that made my hand stop moving. In that moment, I realized the paper my son wanted me to sign wasn't just about surgery. It was about something he never wanted me to survive. If you believe family always wants the best for you, stay with me. And if stories like this pull you into the quiet truths people don't talk about, take a second to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon. Not because you have to, but because what comes next might stay with you longer than you expect. I raised my son alone. That's important to understand. His father left when he was 6, and from that moment on, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked 2 jobs, skipped vacations, ignored my own health, and told myself that as long as my son was okay, nothing else mattered. I trusted him with everything. So when he told me I needed surgery, I didn't question it. It started with small things. I'd feel dizzy standing up. Sometimes my chest felt tight, like I couldn't get a full breath. My son noticed before I did. "Mom, you don't look good," he said one evening, watching me struggle to carry groceries inside. "I'm just tired," I replied. He frowned. "You've been just tired for months." He was the one who scheduled the doctor's appointment. He was the one who drove me. He was the one who sat beside me, holding my hand, nodding at everything the doctor said. The doctor talked about a procedure. Routine. Preventative. Better to do it now than wait. My son squeezed my hand. "See? I told you." I remember feeling proud of him. Responsible. Caring. The kind of son people compliment you for raising well. The surgery was scheduled quickly. Too quickly, maybe. But I didn't know enough to feel suspicious yet. The night before the procedure, my son stayed over. He made dinner, cleaned the kitchen, and even brought me tea before bed. "You don't have to stay," I told him. "I want to, just in case." That should have comforted me. Instead, I lay awake listening to him move around the apartment long after midnight, opening drawers, closing them, walking back and forth. At one point, I heard him on the phone, whispering. I couldn't hear the words, only the tone. Urgent, controlled, not worried. The morning of the surgery, he was already dressed when I came out of my bedroom. He handed me my coat, checked that I had my ID, my insurance card, everything neatly organized. At the hospital, everything felt cold and fast. Bright lights, short questions, wristbands, forms. That's when he handed me the paper. "Just one more thing to sign," he said casually, like it was nothing. "They need it before they take you in." I looked at the paper. Lots of words, small print, legal language. "What is it?" I asked. "Standard stuff. Consent. Just in case something happens." I laughed nervously. "Something happens?" "Mom," he sighed, smiling. "It's routine." I trusted that smile. I picked up the pen. That's when the nurse approached us. She didn't interrupt loudly. She didn't scold him. She simply leaned down, as if adjusting my IV, and whispered, so soft only I could hear, "Please don't sign that until you speak to the doctor alone." My heart skipped. I looked at her confused. "Why?" Her hand paused on the railing of the bed. "Just ask," she whispered. "You have the right." She straightened up and walked away like nothing had happened. My son didn't notice. Or maybe he pretended not to. "What are you waiting for?" he asked, still smiling, but his eyes were sharper now. "They're ready for you." I felt something unfamiliar rise in my chest. Not fear. Awareness. "I want to read it," I said slowly. He exhaled loudly. "Mom, there's no time. They explained all this already." "They explained the surgery, not this." His jaw tightened for a second, a crack too small to matter, unless you were looking for it. "I'll ask the doctor," I said, lowering the pen. His hand came down on the paper. "No," he said quickly. Too quickly. "There's no need to bother him. You trust me, right?" That question hurt more than it should have. Because trust isn't something you ask for like that. It's something that exists or doesn't. I do, I said carefully, but I also trust myself. I motioned for the nurse. I'd like to speak to the doctor alone before I sign anything. The room changed. My son's smile vanished. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." The nurse returned, calm but firm. "She has that right." My son stepped back, crossing his arms. "Fine," he muttered. "I'll wait outside." As soon as the door closed behind him, my hands began to shake. "What is that paper?" I asked the nurse. She hesitated, then said, "It's not my place to explain, but I can tell you this. Patients usually sign it after surgery, not before." That was enough. When the doctor came in, I asked him directly, "Why does my son want me to sign this now?" The doctor frowned. "What paper?" I handed it to him. He read it once, then again, slower. His expression changed. "This isn't standard consent," he said carefully. My stomach dropped. "Then what is it?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "This gives your son decision-making authority if complications arise, including decisions that could override your stated wishes." I swallowed. Why would he need that? The doctor didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, "Has your son been handling your finances lately?" The room felt suddenly too small. "Yes," I said. "Why?" He leaned back slightly. "Because this document is usually requested when there are conflicts of interest." I stared at the door my son had just walked through, and for the first time in my life, a thought crossed my mind that made my chest ache. What if the person I trusted most was planning for a future that didn't include me? I didn't sign the paper. When the nurse wheeled me toward the operating room, my son wasn't there. I told myself it meant nothing, but deep down I knew. Something had already broken, and I had a feeling the surgery wasn't the real danger waiting for me. They rolled me into the operating room under bright white lights that made everything feel unreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life for a while. The anesthesiologist spoke softly, explaining what would happen, asking me to count backward. I did as I was told, but my mind wasn't on the numbers. It was on my son, on the way he'd avoided my eyes after the doctor sent him away, on how quickly his concern had turned into irritation the moment I hesitated to sign, on the nurse's voice, steady, quiet, protective, like she'd seen this before. When I woke up hours later, my throat felt dry and my body heavy. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then everything came rushing back. The paper, the whisper, the look on my son's face. I turned my head, expecting to see him sitting beside my bed. He wasn't there. Instead, a different nurse checked my vitals and smiled politely. "You did great. Surgery went smoothly." "Where's my son?" I asked. She glanced at the chart. "He stepped out earlier, said he'd be back." Hours passed. Visitors came and went from other rooms. I watched nurses change shifts. The daylight outside faded into evening. Still, my son didn't return. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe he needed air. Maybe he was overwhelmed. I raised him to be strong, but everyone has limits. But the silence stretched too long to feel innocent. The next morning, he finally appeared. He looked annoyed. Not relieved, not grateful, annoyed. "You scared everyone yesterday," he said, pulling a chair close to my bed. "I was the one on the cable," I replied quietly. He waved that away. "You always do this. You overthink. You don't trust people." I stared at him. "I trusted you with my life." "That's the problem," he snapped. "You don't understand how complicated things are." "Then explain them," I said, "because right now, nothing makes sense." He opened his mouth, closed it. then smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Let's not stress you out," he said. "You need rest." That was the moment I realized something else. He wasn't worried about my health. He was worried about control. After I was discharged, he insisted I stay at his place for recovery. He said my apartment had stairs, that it wasn't safe. He even packed my things himself, careful, efficient, too practiced. At his house, everything felt different. My room didn't have a lock. My phone charger mysteriously went missing and reappeared only when he was around. When I tried to call my old friend Margaret, the call dropped 3 times. Later, my son mentioned offhandedly that the service in his area was terrible. It wasn't. One afternoon, while he was out running errands, I overheard him through the hallway before he left. "Just give me more time," he said into his phone. "She didn't sign. No, not yet, but she will." My chest tightened. He didn't know I could hear him. I stayed very still, listening to his footsteps fade away. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed moments from the past few years, little things I brushed aside. Him asking about my savings, suggesting I simplify my accounts, offering to handle my bills when I was tired. At the time, it felt thoughtful. Now, it felt strategic. The next morning, I told him I wanted to walk a little, just around the block. He frowned. "You're not ready." "I need fresh air," I said. He hesitated, then nodded. "I'll come with you." "I want to go alone." That silence again. Heavy, sharp. "Why?" he asked. "Because I'm still a person, not a patient." He watched me for a long moment, then stepped aside. "Fine, 10 minutes." Outside, the air felt like freedom. I didn't go for a walk. I went straight to the small cafe on the corner and asked to use their phone. I called the hospital. I asked for the nurse who'd whispered to me. She remembered me. "I was hoping you'd call," she said softly. "What did you see?" I asked. She paused. "Your son asked a lot of questions about worst-case scenarios, about how long recovery would take if something went wrong. And the paper? That document is usually signed when patients are already unconscious. Families use it when there are disagreements about end-of-life care." I closed my eyes. "He wanted that power before surgery," I said. "Yes," which is why I spoke up. My hands trembled. "Why didn't anyone stop him?" "Because technically," she said carefully, "he didn't break any rules." I thanked her and hung up. When I returned to the house, my son was waiting by the window. "You took longer than 10 minutes, he said. "I stopped for coffee," I replied. He smiled tightly. "You didn't tell me." "I don't need permission," I said. That night, I decided to test him. "I've been thinking," I said casually during dinner, "about updating my will." His fork froze mid-air. "Why now?" he asked too quickly. "After surgery," I said, "you realize things." He nodded slowly. "That's smart." "I might leave some money to charity," I added. The color drained from his face before he could stop it. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "Because it's mine," I said. He laughed. "Don't be dramatic. Family comes first." "Does it?" I asked. He stared at me, and for a second, I saw something raw behind his eyes. Fear. That was when I knew. Whatever he was planning depended on my silence, my obedience, and my trust. And now, he wasn't sure he had any of those. I went to bed that night with a plan forming in my mind. Not anger, clarity. I wasn't going to confront him. I wasn't going to accuse him. I was going to let him believe he still had control. Because the most dangerous moment for someone hiding a secret is when they think they've already won. I let him believe I was calming down. That was the hardest part. Not reacting, not asking questions, not letting my fears show. I smiled more. I asked him about his day. I thanked him for meals he ordered instead of cooking. I told him I was tired and needed rest. And he relaxed. People always do when they think the danger has passed. He started talking more freely, not about plans, but about complaints, about how stressful life had become, about how unfair it was that responsibility always landed on him, about how he'd sacrificed everything to take care of me. One evening, as he poured himself a drink, he said, "You know, if something had gone wrong in surgery, I would have been the one making the hard choices." I looked at him. "That must have been scary." He nodded. "Yeah, but necessary." Necessary. That word sat heavy in my chest. A few days later, he invited someone over. A man I didn't recognize. Polite, well-dressed, confident in the way people are when they expect to be listened to. "This is Daniel," my son said, "an old friend." Daniel shook my hand and smiled. "I've heard so much about you." They talked while I sat quietly, knitting something I didn't plan to finish. They spoke in half sentences, glances, pauses. The kind of conversation that leaves out the most important parts. At one point, Daniel said, "Timing matters." My son nodded. "That's why we need patience." I pretended not to hear. After Daniel left, I asked casually, "Who was that really?" My son didn't hesitate. "Business. You wouldn't be interested." That answer told me everything. The next morning, I asked to visit my old doctor for a follow-up. "I'll drive you," he said immediately. "I can manage," I replied. He frowned. "I insist." At the clinic, while he went to get coffee, I spoke to the receptionist. Quietly, carefully. "I need to update my emergency contact," I said. "Immediately." She nodded and handed me the form. I didn't remove my son. I added someone else. Margaret. Later that afternoon, I asked my son if I could have my phone fully back. "You already have it," he said. "I mean without restrictions. No checking, no hovering." He stared at me. "Why would I check your phone?" I met his eyes. "Exactly." Another pause. Another capulation. That night, I called Margaret. I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she didn't gasp or panic. She said something far more important. "I believe you." The next week, my son suggested something that made my stomach turn. "We should talk about long-term care," he said. "Just planning." "I'm recovering," I replied. "Exactly. That's when things are fragile." He talked about facilities, about oversight, about professionals handling things. "And where would I be?" I asked. "Somewhere safe, where I can visit." I smiled. "You're very prepared." "I have to be," he said. "Someone has to think ahead." That night, I packed a small bag and hid it under the bed. I wasn't leaving yet, but I was getting ready. A few days later, he lost his patience. It happened when I refused to sign another paper he slid across the table. He said it was routine. I didn't even look at it. "Later," I said. His jaw tightened. "You're being difficult again." "I'm being careful," I replied. He stood up suddenly. "You think I'm trying to hurt you?" I didn't answer. Silence is louder than accusation. He ran a hand through his hair. "Everything I do is for you." "Then why do I feel afraid?" I asked quietly. He froze. Just for a second. Then his face hardened. "You're imagining things." That was the first time he stopped pretending to be patient. From that day on, his kindness became conditional. Meals arrived late, rides were forgotten. His tone sharpened. But he still needed something from me, and I knew it. So I waited. The opportunity came when Margaret called my son directly. She told him she wanted to check on me, that she missed me, that she worried. He agreed too quickly. When she arrived, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "You ready?" I nodded. We talked openly in front of him, about memories, about nothing important. Then Margaret said, "You know, if anything ever happened to you, I'd raise hell." My son laughed, too loud. "Nothing's going to happen," he said. She smiled. "Good, because secrets don't stay buried forever." The air shifted. That night, my son confronted me. "What have you told her?" he demanded. "The truth," I replied. His eyes darkened. "You're trying to turn people against me." "No," I replied. "You did that yourself." He leaned in close. "You need to be careful." That was the moment the fear left me, because threats mean desperation, and desperation means mistakes. The next morning, I told him I was ready to sign. His relief was instant, careless. We sat at the table. He placed the paper in front of me again. My hand hovered over the pen. "I just want to talk first," I said. He nodded impatiently. "I want to understand why you're in such a hurry." He sighed. "Because I can't keep living like this." "Like what?" I asked. "Waiting," he snapped, "depending on what you decide on when." There it was. The truth. "I raised you," I said. "I trusted you. And now it's my turn to survive," he replied. I looked at him, really looked. This wasn't about care. It was about control. I set the pen down. "I'll sign tomorrow," I said. He clenched his jaw but nodded. That night, I didn't sleep. I called Margaret. Then I made one more call. Not to a lawyer. To someone who knew my son very well. Someone who owed me a favor. And as I lay there in the dark, listening to my son move around the house, I understood something clearly for the first time. Revenge doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be precise. And by morning, everything was going to change. Morning came quietly. Too quietly. The kind of morning that pretends nothing is about to happen. I lay in bed listening to the house wake up, the soft hum of the refrigerator, the floorboards creaking as my son walked down the hallway. He knocked on my door once, gently, like he always did when he wanted to appear caring. "Breakfast is ready," he said. I took a breath and opened the door. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. At the table, the paper was already there, pen placed carefully on top, everything prepared, controlled. I sat down slowly. "You said today," he reminded me. "I remember," I replied. He poured coffee for himself, not for me. Another small shift, another reveal. Before I reached for the pen, I said, "There's something I need to tell you." He stiffened. "What?" "I made some arrangements last night." His smile faded. "What kind of arrangements?" I folded my hands. The kind people make when they realize they've trusted the wrong person. His chair scraped loudly as he stood. "You're being dramatic again." "No," I said calmly. "I'm being honest. Finally." He laughed, but it sounded thin. "You're not well. That surgery messed with your head." I knew you'd say that. That's why I didn't rely on my words alone. His eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" The doorbell rang. Once. Sharp. Unexpected. He froze. "I wasn't expecting anyone," he said. "I was," I replied. He hesitated, then walked to the door. I stayed seated. Voices followed. Familiar ones. Margaret's voice. And another. A man's voice. My son's posture changed when he saw who it was. His shoulders tightened. His confidence cracked. "Can we come in?" the man asked politely. My son glanced back at me. "Mom?" I met his eyes. "Let them in." He stepped aside. The man introduced himself calmly, not with authority, not with threat, just presence. "I'm here because someone expressed serious concerns," he said. My son scoffed. "This is ridiculous. She's confused." The man turned to me. "Would you like to speak?" "Yes," I said. "But first, I want my son to listen." He opened his mouth to interrupt. I raised my hand. "Please," I said softly. "Just listen. For once." Silence filled the room. I stood slowly, feeling steadier than I had in weeks. "I trusted you," I said, looking directly at him. "I trusted you with my recovery, with my home, with my life." He rolled his eyes. "I took care of you." "You managed me," I corrected. "You isolated me. You rushed decisions. You spoke for me when I was vulnerable." "That's not illegal," he snapped. "No," I agreed, "but it is revealing." The man beside Margaret watched carefully, not writing anything, just observing. I didn't need proof. I needed witnesses, patterns, people who noticed the same changes I did. My son's face drained of color. "You think you're clever, but you have nothing." I smiled. "That's where you're wrong," I said. "I have people." Margaret stepped forward. "I watched you rush her into decisions. I heard how you spoke to her when you thought no one was listening." The man nodded. "And others have shared similar concerns." My son laughed again, louder this time. "So what? You're all ganging up on me?" "No," I replied. "We're stepping back." He blinked. "What?" "I'm moving out today," I said. He stared at me. "You can't." "I can, and I am." The man spoke again. "Arrangements have already been made to ensure her independence and care." My son turned red. "You went behind my back." "Yes," I said, "just like you did." He slammed his hand on the table. "You owe me." I flinched, not from fear, but from sadness. "That's the truth," I said quietly. "You never saw me as your mother, just an obstacle." He opened his mouth, then stopped, because there was nothing left to say. The man cleared his throat. "We'll be staying for a bit, just to ensure the transition goes smoothly." My son looked around his own house like it had betrayed him. Margaret helped me pack the small bag I'd prepared. As we walked to the door, my son called out, "You're making a mistake." I turned back one last time. "No," I said. "I'm correcting one." Outside, the air felt different, lighter. I hadn't won anything. I'd reclaimed something. Over the next weeks, the truth settled into place. People stopped returning his calls. Family members began asking questions he couldn't answer, not because I accused him, but because I stopped protecting him. That was the revenge. Silence, distance, boundaries. He lost control because I took myself back. Months later, he tried to visit. I didn't answer the door. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Because forgiveness doesn't mean access, and love doesn't mean submission. I live quietly now, safely, on my terms. Sometimes I think about that moment in the hospital, the nurse's whisper, the pause that saved me. She didn't shout, she didn't accuse, she just gave me awareness. And that was enough. Because once you see the truth, no one can ever make you sign your life away again.